episode within Dr. Darnise's House of Religion, Magic, and Conjure. So, welcome in, and this episode is about Easter, but maybe not in the way that you're used to talking about Easter and understanding the Easter story. And so I'm not going to, give a sermon, nothing like that. I'm not going to talk about, Jesus died for our sins kind of thing. No. What I want to do is just spend some time talking about the women in Jesus's life story. Here, I guess I'll say a couple words about Easter itself. So, because some people are already like, Easter is fake and whatever. And as I always say, there's no such thing as pure religion. Every religion is a mixture of culture with the religion. It's just how it is. And it doesn't mean that it's bad because it's a mix of things. So Easter, yeah, one of the high holy days of Christianity, like Christmas, the other high holy day of Christmas, is full of, you know, pre-Christian ritual, what people like to call pagan ritual. Everything, every tradition we have, every ritual we have pretty much is pagan. It just means it's the underground religion. Pagan just means that's what people were doing before the institutional religion came along. So it's the underground. So let's not get hung up on that. This is not that video. I already made a video about Easter. You can check that out. But again, as I said, this one is about the women and Jesus's life. And because a lot of times we gloss over these women. You know, Jesus' mama, Mary, right? Miriam in Hebrew. Let's locate Jesus, right? A brown-skinned Palestinian Jewish man, North African, not a Nordic blonde-haired white man. His mother was a very young girl, a young teenager, when she is told that she's going to have this baby, right? Like she has an annunciation where the angel Gabriel comes to her and basically says, paraphrasing, "Hail Mary, full of grace, blessed art thou among women. The Lord has found favor with thee," right? And so then she learns that she's being asked to agree to carry God's baby. Just think about that. Like whether or not, we're talking about the story of Christianity, the Christian narrative. We are told that this human woman is to bear the Son of God. And yet we gloss over that as if it's nothing. Oh, Mary, yeah, okay. Unless you're Catholic, and Catholics, revere Mary more directly. No, they don't worship Mary. Some people, some Protestants or non-Catholics will say, oh, Catholics are wrong because they worship Mary. They don't worship her. They revere her more than a lot of Protestants do. Well, and rightly so. She is the bearer of God. All right, so there we have Mary, right? And then we're told along Jesus' life, he matures, right? She gives birth and he matures. And his first miracle, does anybody know what the first miracle was? I feel like I'm in class now and they don't know. The first miracle is the wedding at Cana and reported in the Gospel of John. And his mother tells him, hey, do this. We've run out of wine. Help the people out. It's a wedding here. Do what you do and make it so. So, and Jesus resists, right? He's kind of like, no, Mom, it's not my time yet. I'm not doing it. And she's like, do what I tell you to do. Like a mother would. Do what I tell you. And he ends up doing it. Now, the reason I'm pointing this story out is because I'm pointing out there's a woman who gives birth to him, his mother. His mother also commands him to do his first miracle. It's like she is initiating him because he doesn't even think that it's his time. But his mother says, it is your time, right? I have carried you. I know what's up with you. I tell you it's your time now. So this is his initiation, and his mother is the one who opens that particular doorway for him and even helps him see it, right? She helps him see, no, it's time, because he's kind of like, eh. So then we move along in the story, and Jesus meets other women. Jesus meets a Samaritan woman at the well. Jesus meets and has conversation with a Syrophoenician woman. And these are unusual. So in our time, what we don't necessarily realize is how unusual it was for a single Jewish man to have conversation with random women. That was not something culturally that would have been done. First of all, the fact that these women are kind of on their own is already an indicator that something is off about these women, because that's not the norm for women at the time. So when he's meeting and having a conversation with these women, the woman he meets at the well, she even says, "You're talking to me?" She's surprised, because Jewish men don't talk. They don't have conversation like that. They don't have casual conversation. A Jewish man be like, "Oh no, I don't." And a Samaritan is somebody of mixed race, questionable ethnicity. So again, he wouldn't have really been talking to her. So the fact that he did, she's like, "Well, what's up here?" And so my point is, Jesus is having interactions with women that often get glossed over because we only see one at a time, one story at a time, and we don't put them together and see, wow, Jesus had a lot of interaction with women, and that would have been very unusual. And it's the women who give him another perspective on things. It's women who, well, one, births him into this world, right? Born of a woman. Everybody got to come through a woman. And then it's his mother who says, "It's your time now. Let's go. Let's get it going." And then he meets women along the way who make him think a little bit differently, right? They have a conversation with him where it's not just like, "Oh, okay, yes, sir, yes, master," right? "Yes, rabbi." They're like, what? So my point is, the women that Jesus is encountering are shaping who he is. He's having a lot of interactions with women who are shaping who he is. And then we get to Mary Magdalene. And probably you've been told Mary Magdalene is a prostitute, which she wasn't. Or rather, we have no evidence that she was a prostitute. But what she was a single woman on her own. And a single woman on her own in that environment was questionable. Which is my point. Like, there was no room in nice society for single women. You had to be, somehow you were thrown out of your family unit. You didn't have a man, a father, a husband, a brother. You had no man to take care of you. So the idea would have been that something is wrong with you. Maybe you're sick. Maybe you're mentally sick. Maybe you're unclean in some kind of a way, ritually and continually unclean, like the woman with the issue of blood. So if you remember that story, the woman with the issue of blood said she had spent all her money trying to get healed. And as women, we can only imagine what that was. But did she have endometriosis? Did she have fibroids? Things that we have a name for now. The things that cause women to have an ongoing issue of blood. But that woman said, if I can get to him, I know I will be healed. And she has to make her way through a crowd to just touch his robe. And when she does that, Jesus feels his energy go out of his body, and he's like, "Who touched me?" Right? So as a woman who basically navigates through a society, literally through some streets, we can imagine, to do something that really she wasn't supposed to do, which is touch a man, right? Like you can't do it. It's very rigid society. And women didn't have freedom of mobility, and it was certainly out of outside of appropriate behavior for a man and a woman to touch. Anyways, we get to Mary Magdalene, who we're told is a prostitute, but she is just a single woman. And she needs healing, though. We do know that. And Jesus heals her of some, we're told, demons. So she probably had some, I mean, we could guess and say some mental disturbances. And that would have been enough for her to have been excluded from her community. So that might have been why she was on her own. Jesus meets her and cures her, and then she hangs around. Again, the 12 disciples, they're all men, right? And then you've got this one woman who hangs around, very unusual. She is already starting to minister. She is already starting to be one of the disciples, which gets completely left out of the telling of the story. We're told there are 12 male disciples and, oh yeah, and Mary Magdalene, the prostitute, reformed prostitute. No, she's a minister and she becomes part of the team, part of the ministering team. And what we get in the other gospels from Gnostic gospels, the gospel according to Mary Magdalene, is that there was a relationship going on between her and Jesus. And I know some Christians don't want to hear about that Jesus had relations with Mary Magdalene. And I guess we're never going to know for absolutely sure if they did the deed, but it's pretty clear that they had some kind of personal relationship. You can look in alternate gospels for that version. But again, my point here is to say Jesus had ongoing interactions with women that definitely shaped who he was, and we forget them. So my video today is really just to say, look, let's not forget how Jesus managed to move through his time on earth and through his ministry with the help of women. Plus he had women who were financing him, which we come to find out, right? And the early Christian church financing. Then of course we get to Jesus's crucifixion. And who's there with them? Again, the women. Now, because the disciples they're running for their lives, right? The police are after them. Just to put in our current context, the popo are after them and they are scurrying. Peter is, Jesus already told him, you're going to deny me 3 times. And Peter's like, oh no, I would never do that. I love you. And sure enough, he denies him, right? So they're running for their lives. So who is with Jesus at the cross, at his crucifixion? His mother Mary, and there's Marys, we're told, his mother Mary, this Mary, this Mary. We know Mary Magdalene. Where else she got to be? And then the deed is done, right? He dies on that cross. And so following the Christian story some more, and, in telling this, you kind of got to put aside, if you're somebody who's like, I don't believe in Christianity, that's fine. We're talking about the Christian story as we have it, right? And how we get to Easter. So this is you can put in parentheses this episode, because obviously Christianity is a world religion and people believe in the power of this resurrection and so we have this Easter holiday. And my point is to highlight how women had a very particular role to play in shaping Jesus, birthing him, initiating him, shaping him, taking care of him at his assassination, and taking care of him afterwards. After the crucifixion, who goes to the tomb? marries, the women go to the tomb. How are we going to even, what are they thinking? Like, oh, he's in this tomb with this rock. Like, how are we even going to move that out of the way? Just the thought, how are we even going to move this out of the way when we get there, this enormous boulder? But they're going to do the things that need to be done to a body, right? To be treated, to be cleaned, to perform the rituals that one does for the dead, right? To know how to use the right herbs, to care for the body, right? And so we're told it's the women. And so the first person to proclaim Jesus is risen is a woman. So for Christians who obviously celebrate Easter, you got to give the due to the fact that the first evangelist was a woman. And then she goes and tell, Peter now. And well, we can just we know what happened, right? The men kind of take over at that point. And then what the tradition of Christianity does is to marginalize women. Women take a back seat in Christianity. There are Christian churches now, obviously, where women can't even preach in the pulpit. Obviously, the Catholic Church doesn't ordain women. There are a lot of conservative Baptists and Pentecostals, to name a couple, also some various fundamentalists, who will not have a woman even preach. But it was a woman who first did. How might the story have gone differently if the tradition had really embraced Mary Magdalene as a teacher, as a minister, as someone carrying forward this gospel, this message? So from cradle to grave, there's all these women in Jesus's life. And that's really what I wanted to just to share on this Easter. A good many people are celebrating Easter. A good many people are looking at Easter like, oh, here they go, the Christians, here they go again with this thing. Well, I thought I would take the Easter story and make it and highlight something a little bit different. And that is how the women had him from cradle to grave, literally. And I would add, if you've hung on this long, here's your bonus. I would add that the resurrecting power, well, we know the Christian story really has stolen a lot from the African, right? We know that this story of Isis and Osiris and Horus, so Asar, Aset, and Heru, and their African names. We know Christianity stole from their story. Though they're the original Holy Family, right? Asar, Aset, and Heru, also known as Isis, Osiris, and Horus in the Greek. But it was Isis or Aset who resurrects Osiris or Asar. Again, in the original form of the story from the African, there is a woman who resurrects the dead god, Osiris. So if you don't know the story of Isis, I'm not going to have time to go into it right here, but you can obviously look it up. But Osiris gets killed by his brother and dismembered, and it is Isis who goes and puts him back together and uses his phallus to impregnate herself. And so in that sense, brings him back to life. She puts his body back together. She is able to empower his body to impregnate herself with the sun, right? So I've said quite a lot there. If you really want to look that up, you can just have the internet at your fingertips and just go and look up the story of Isis and Osiris and Horus, Asar, Aset, and Heru and their African names, as I said. So this idea of the preeminence of a woman's energy, a woman's body that brings forth the divine is not a new story. It is an always ongoing story, right? It is a woman's body that gives birth, and it is women who very often bring back, right, to resurrect. So I'd be interested in your comments. Video getting a little long here. I'd be interested in your comments. What other women who you know from the text that I might have skipped over their story, or your thoughts. I'm going to wrap it up, and as usual, please like, share, subscribe, especially this one in this Easter season. Maybe you need you'd like to share it with somebody who had never thought, they've never thought about the women other than, as Mother Mary just giving birth and then that's it, right? So if you know some of those people, maybe it's time for them to have a different perspective and check out the women in the story. I'd appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe. That's all. Bye for now.